Even so, there was an instance in Grenoble, where private operators paid off the mayor to secure the contract. They made up the cost of the bribe 2 or 3 times over by charging exorbitant rates.
Germany's 7,000 mostly communal or municipal waterworks produce some of the cleanest water in Europe, but that quality has its price. Now, with many communities getting in over their heads in debt, more and more are looking to private participation to help pull them out. Berlin is a prime example. A consortium of RWE and Vivendi, now called Veolia, entered Berlin's water market in 1999.
Berlin has quite a deficit problem and was able to gain the considerable sum of 1.58 billion euros for its budget through this privatization.
But a conflict between public and private interest was inevitable. The investors put on pressure to keep the contract details under lock and key. They were long known only to the finance senator.
If a member of the Berlin Senate wanted to examine the contract, they were only given the opportunity to leaf through it. And it consisted of several thousand pages. They weren't allowed to make copies, so it wasn't possible for them to consult an outside authority.
On one point, Berlin would not budge. The city insisted on retaining the majority stake. That way, it would always remain in control.
I think when you've got a private company involved in such a sensitive and critical area as water supply management, it's important and prudent to couple it with a strong partner. It's a check and balance.
Check and balance.
This partnership is taking over the reunified Berlin's 16,000-kilometer water mains network. Some parts are over a century old. The cost of replacing them could be steep. Critics are afraid these costs will be the first to get cut.
Our greatest fear is that in the future, the most badly needed investments will be the ones not forthcoming.
It doesn't make any sense to make short-term gains by cutting back on maintenance, for example. We're talking about a 20-year contract here. Sooner or later, the costs will be much higher, because it won't be just about maintenance. The system will need rebuilding.
5 years after privatization, there's been no real change in the quality of Berlin's water. So far, none of the critics' fears has come to pass.
We didn't really have any problems to solve here in Berlin. That sets us apart from many, many other countries in the world.
Most of the problems that urgently need solving are in poorer countries, where governments have been ineffective and regulatory agencies lacking. Even development aid often just goes down the drain. One new concept being tried is the public-private partnership.
Have passed since the fall of the Stalinist regime in Albania, but the tiny Balkan nation is still the poorest in Europe. The water system has hardly been touched in that time. The chlorination station of the city of Elbasan, population 140,000.
A tentative first step is being taken here towards combining public and private management and making sure development aid is put to its proper use. With a low-interest loan from the German Development Ministry, Berlin Wasser International has taken a share in the community waterworks.
The private side of the combination provides the impetus for the project and has a vested interest in staying with it for the long haul. That makes all the difference.
The private side has an interest in making money. But for the company to make money, the consumers have to pay their water bills. Many Albanians refuse to do so. So the company sends around bill collectors. This woman doesn't want to pay, insisting the quality of her water hasn't improved.
departe kan vetëm ke njerëzit që s'ka ujë dhe që
When the water's dirty, or it's temporarily not available, there can be some heated discussions, definitely.
I'm willing to pay for the water. If it's clear and good, I'll pay for it. By the way, up to now, I don't think the Germans have invested enough. The entire sewage system had already been redone beforehand by our people. Why should we pay for it now?
Elbasan's water mains are in deplorable shape. The very first item on Berlin-Wasser's agenda for the area is a general overhaul. It's hoped that then burst pipelines under the terrace will be nothing but an unhappy memory.
The company has 10 years to get the water supply network up to standard and to do it without overly disrupting local community life. Those are conditions set by the Development Ministry for its low-interest loan. It's common for people to tap into the pipelines illegally in Elbasan. The relatively well-off owner of this unregistered car wash, for example, refuses to pay for the water it uses. Registered customers have to pick up the cost.
You probably have the same problems with customers in Germany. They don't want to pay their bills, or they pay late. On top of that, people here haven't paid anything at all for water as a natural resource for years or even decades, and so they're not accustomed to it.
Here, the most important function of a water meter is raising awareness. Freeloading, misuse and the failing mains network add up to a wildly exaggerated consumption of 800 litres per capita per day.
It's a good thing we're getting these water meters. Now we'll finally be paying only for what we actually use. Our family has always paid our water bills. I think that's only right. Besides, it'll put some discipline into people's water consumption.
Elbasan is a pilot project. If its success holds, it could serve as a model for the combination of public and private capital, and as one approach to improving water systems in adverse circumstances.
There's a good reason for this project being a public-private partnership. A private company surely would not have taken on the risks of investing alone.
Whatever form the various privatization projects in the world take, they all have in common their focus on the cities. For the countryside, where many of the poorest people live, there seems to be no real concept.
If a country is so poor, and if it doesn't have access to international aid, there may be no absolute solution.
In Haiti, one of the world's poorest countries, hardly anyone can afford the luxury of running water, least of all the farmers whose livelihoods depend on it. But even here, there are initiatives to find a solution. The people of San Rafael dug their own 11-kilometer-long canal. It feeds into hundreds of side channels, which supply 1,500 families with water for themselves and their fields. The only assistance they got came from German agro-action.
It was granted on condition that the government leave the operation up to the people who use the system. Self-administration takes the place of privatization. Now, water flows steadily in San Rafael the whole year round, and the people pay only for what they use.
Since we've had the canal, the crops have been growing better. Now we always have water. We harvest more and can sell more. It's a really good thing.
An elected committee administers the canal. The farmers here couldn't even imagine a private company having control over it.
Not Germany and not the government built that canal, but the people of San Rafael. They use it, they manage it, and they know it's their canal.
We are seeing more and more examples where community-scale water systems that are publicly run, publicly designed with local communities can be extremely effective and extremely cost-effective.
But the fundamental dichotomy remains the well-capitalized corporations of the industrialized countries on one side and the increasingly urgent need for clean drinking water in the poorer countries on the other side. Is privatization the solution to the water crisis for these people?
In my view, public resources belong under public control. They have to be transparent, and so they should remain in the public sector.
The public sector would be well advised to retain control over development, but it doesn't have to take care of everything by itself.
Government involvement is absolutely necessary in any proposals to privatize water systems. Without it, privatization can be a disaster.
Obviously, there's no panacea for this planet's water crisis. Every situation has its own set of circumstances. There are many roads to take to reach a solution. Privatization is only one of them, and not always the best one. Whatever road is taken, the imperative for the 21st century remains the same. Water for the people, for all the people.
Îți dorești prospețime și curățenie chiar și între jeturile de apă? Acum există un mod mai ușor.
Noul pref bioactiv. Cele 4 biluțe puternice asigură curățenie vizibilă și prospețime chiar și între utilizări.
Mereu curată și împrospătată.
Noul pref bioactiv.
Just one strong front, we are free.